Welcome back to the deep dive. I have to admit, looking at today's stack of sources, I'm uh I'm kind of looking at the corner of my room a little differently right now.
I mean, that makes sense.
Eh.
It's a massive topic we're tackling today.
Yeah, usually we're digging into, historical events or maybe the latest tech trends or some obscure psychological study that you sent over. But today we are zooming out, like way out.
Right out to the architecture of everything, really.
Exactly. We are essentially asking a question that, well, it sounds like something you'd argue about in a dorm room at 3 in the morning.
But it's actually being asked by serious physicists and computational scientists right now.
Right. The question being, what if the eerie similarities between video game engines and the laws of physics aren't just coincidences?
And we need to be very clear right off the bat here, because I know exactly what you were thinking when you hear simulation theory.
Oh, for sure. You're thinking of Keanu Reeves in a trench coat, right?
Exactly. Or evil robots using humanity as literal batteries.
Or just some nihilistic conspiracy theory that nothing is real, nothing matters, so why even try?
And that is explicitly not what we are discussing today at all.
Yeah, we aren't talking about a sci-fi plot twist here. We are talking about the Sandbox Theory.
Which is a computational framework. It's
Yeah.
a way of looking at the universe not as a scripted movie where everything is fate, and not as a chaotic void where nothing means anything, but as a system.
A system with hard-coded rules and this is my favorite phrase from the sources, emergent gameplay.
It's a great phrase. It really captures how agency fits into a rigid framework.
Emergent gameplay implies that even if the board is set, the moves you make aren't predetermined. But before we get to the philosophy of it all, we really have to deal with the physics.
We do. Because the sources we brought in today, these articles on digital physics, the diagrams of what they call the universal engine, the notes on general relativity, they suggest something incredible.
They suggest that we can actually reconcile the biggest problem in modern science. And we can do it by treating the universe like a video game.
That is the core mission of this deep dive.
Sure.
Right now, in physics, we have general relativity. That's the physics of the huge. Stars, galaxies, gravity.
Macro stuff.
Right. And then we have quantum mechanics, the physics of the tiny. Atoms, electrons, quarks.
And for 100 years, they just haven't gotten along. They completely contradict each other.
But if you view them through the lens of system architecture, if you look at them as software and hardware constraints, they suddenly snap together. They fit.
So our mission for you today is to take this stack of research and extract the source code of reality.
We are going to break down the math without giving you a headache.
We're going to explain why the universe has a speed limit, why time only moves in one direction, and whether or not you actually chose to click on this deep dive, or if it was just, a line of code executing.
Ultimately, this is a tool for critical thinking. Whether you walk away believing we are literally in a simulation or not doesn't really matter.
Right, it's about the lens.
Exactly. Applying this game engine lens helps us understand the limits of our world. It gives us a framework for the why behind the laws of physics.
Okay, so grab your controller, we're dropping in, and we have to start with the map, the environment itself.
The environment. This brings us to a concept that gamers know intimately, but physicists discuss under a completely different name. In the source material, this is referred to as the world seed.
Right. And for the non-gamers listening, I should probably explain how that works. In a game like Minecraft or No Man's Sky, you have these virtually infinite worlds.
Massive scales.
Miles and miles of mountains, oceans, cave systems. But the game developers didn't sit there in a studio and hand sculpt every single rock and tree.
That would take lifetime.
And the file size would be bigger than the entire internet. You couldn't fit it on a hard drive.
So instead, they use a seed. It's a string of numbers, a specific mathematical formula.
The game engine just takes that seed and says, okay, at coordinate X and Y, apply this specific noise formula, and boom, a mountain appears.
At this other coordinate, carve out a cave, generate a river.
So the entire world, every single block of it, exists mathematically on the hard drive before anyone ever steps foot in it.
It is pre-generated potential.
Right.
Now, I want you to hold that thought. The idea that the terrain is already mathematically determined by a seed. And let's look at Einstein's theory of general relativity.
Here we go.
Specifically, we need to look at the concept of Minkowski spacetime, better known as the 4D block universe.
This is the part of the research that always melts my brain. The block universe.
It is duckly counterintuitive because it contradicts our daily experience. We experience life as a flow. You and I are talking right now, in the present.
The past is just memory.
And the future hasn't happened yet. It feels like we're floating down a river, moving from one moment to the next.
Right, I can't paddle back upstream to yesterday.
But the math of relativity suggests that this feeling of flow is just an illusion of our perception. Instead, physicists ask us to imagine the universe as a giant, solid block of ice.
Or the loaf of bread analogy. I saw that in the notes.
Yes, a loaf of bread is perfect. The entire loaf exists all at once. The heel sliced at the front, all the slices in the middle, the heel at the back.
And in this analogy, the slices of bread are moments in time.
Exactly. The formation of the Earth is a slice. The dinosaur extinction is a slice. The Roman Empire is a slice.
You listening to us right now is a slice.
And your retirement party is a slice much further down the loaf. But the key takeaway from the 4D block theory is that the whole loaf sits on the table simultaneously.
Okay, wait. Stop. I have to push back on this. Because if the loaf is already baked, if the future coordinates are already sitting there on the table, then my retirement party already exists.
According to the strict interpretation of the block universe, yes, it is just a location.
A location.
Just like Paris exists right now, even if you are not currently in Paris. The future exists. You just haven't traveled to those temporal coordinates yet.
But that feels so claustrophobic. If the future is already a fixed point on the map, then what are any of us doing?
You're just moving through it.
Am I just riding a roller coaster on a track that's already been built? I feel like I'm making choices. I feel like I could choose to retire in Florida or in the mountains or keep working. Are you saying that choice is already hard-coded?
That is the central tension of this theory. That is the existential horror of the block universe. If the map is pre-rendered by the world seed, then the terrain of your future is entirely fixed.
You're just traversing it. You're not creating it.
Exactly. You are exploring a level that is already finished.
I don't like that. I want to be the architect of my life, not just a tourist walking through a museum.
That feeling is completely valid, but we have to look at the mathematical evidence that leads physicists to this conclusion. Why do they think the universe is a solid block?
It comes down to the math of the map, right?
Yes. There is a specific equation in the sources that proves this structural integrity, the invariant interval.
Right. I wrote this down from the notes. It's ds squared equals negative c squared dd2 squared plus dx squared plus dy squared plus dz squared.
Which is a mouthful.
Honestly, it looks like the kind of equation that makes freshmen drop out of engineering school.
It looks incredibly intimidating on paper, but the core concept is actually very intuitive if we visualize it.
Okay, walk me through it. Keep it simple.
Imagine you are holding a physical ruler, a standard 12-inch wooden ruler. You hold it up horizontally right in front of your face. It has a length, a width, and a thickness.
Okay, I've got the ruler in my mind.
Now, if you take that ruler and tilt it away from you, pointing it away from your face, it looks shorter from your perspective, right?
Sure, pieces of perspective, foreshortening.
The apparent length changes based on your angle of observation. But does the wooden ruler actually get shorter?
No, it's still a 12-inch piece of wood.
Exactly. The physical length of the ruler is an invariant. It does not change no matter what angle you look at it from.
Okay, that makes sense.
Now, Einstein discovered that space and time work together in the exact same way. Space can shrink and time can slow down, depending on how fast you're moving through the universe.
Right, time dilation. That's the interstellar effect. If I fly a spaceship really fast, I age slower than the people back on Earth.
Exactly. So time itself is not fixed, and space itself is not fixed. They are relative. But, and this is the crucial part, there is a mathematical combination of space and time that is fixed.
And that's the equation I read earlier.
Yes, that equation calculates the space-time interval. It is the length of the ruler for the universe. It calculates the fundamental distance between any two events.
Say between my birth and my death.
Yes, and that distance is invariant.
Meaning it's absolute.
It is completely absolute.
Yeah.
No matter who looks at it, no matter how fast they are moving or what angle they view it from, the space-time interval between those 2 points in your life is mathematically locked.
So if the geometry connecting my birth and my death is locked, that means the overall shape of my life is already determined.
It strongly implies that the architecture of the level is finalized. The geometry of the universe is independent of the observer. No amount of human will, no amount of choice can alter the fundamental shape of that space-time block.
The map is rendered.
The map is fully rendered.
That is just heavy. It's like finding out you're inside a dungeon crawler game, and you think you have freedom, but you realize you can't actually dig through the stone walls.
You have to follow the corridors that were generated.
You have to follow the corridors. So in this view, fate isn't some mystical destiny written by the stars or some divine plan.
No, fate is just geometry. Fate is the walls of the level. We are navigating a finalized four-dimensional architecture.
Okay. Wow. So that wraps up section 1, the map. The world seed is the block universe. The future is physically waiting for us.
But a map by itself isn't a game.
Right, a map is just a static 3D model. To be a game, it needs rules. It needs a physics engine to dictate how things interact.
And this is where the sandbox theory gets really, really interesting. It completely reframes what we call the laws of physics. It doesn't view them as divine commandments. It views them as hardware constraints.
I absolutely love this framing. It takes all the magic and mystery out of physics and translates it into text specs. We aren't governed by ethereal laws. We are limited by the processing power of the system we inhabit.
Correct. So let's look at the most famous law in physics to demonstrate this. The speed of light, commonly denoted as c,
Roughly 186,000 miles per second.
which is incredibly fast. But the question physicists ask is, why that specific number? Why isn't the speed of light instantaneous?
Why isn't it infinite?
Right. If the universe is a purely physical reality, why can't I push a rigid stick here on Earth and have the other end of the stick move instantly on Mars?
Honestly, I always just assumed it was just a random rule of nature. I never questioned why it wasn't instant.
In the sandbox theory, the speed of light isn't just about how fast photons move through a vacuum. It represents the processor's clock speed.
Clock speed, or the bandwidth of the universe.
Yes. Think about bandwidth like your internet connection.
Right, so think about an online multiplayer game, a fast-paced shooter.
Okay.
If you are sitting in New York and you shoot a character being controlled by a player in Tokyo, that action isn't instantaneous.
The information has to physically travel.
Right, your computer sends the data to the server processes the hit, updates the game state, and then sends that data to the screen in Tokyo. And that entire round trip takes time.
Gamers call that latency. Or
Yeah.
ping. Exactly. Now imagine if a player could somehow move faster than that information could travel. Imagine you could shoot the other player before the central server even registered that you pulled your trigger.
The game would completely break. Things would start happening out of order. You'd get killed by people who hadn't even rounded the corner yet.
Causality would decohere.
Mm.
The logic of cause and effect breaks down. In our actual universe, if you could travel or send a message faster than light, you could theoretically arrive at a destination before you left.
Which breaks reality.
You could send a message back in time and tell your grandfather not to meet your grandmother. The fundamental logic of the simulation would crash.
So the speed of light isn't a speed limit just for the sake of punishing us. It's a fundamental crash protection mechanism.
It is the maximum update rate of the universal engine. Information simply cannot propagate through space faster than the underlying processor can update the global world state.
That makes me feel like the universe is just a really, really high-end gaming PC. But even the best PC still has hardware specs. It's not infinite.
It is definitively not infinite, and we see that hard limit again with the next constraint mentioned in the sources, the Planck length.
The Planck length. Now, I know this is small.
Very small.
It is the smallest possible measurement of distance in physics. It's roughly 1.6 times 10 to the negative 35 meters.
Which is incomprehensibly tiny.
But here is the kicker, the part that really points to a digital reality. In quantum physics, it is mathematically meaningless to talk about any distance smaller than the Planck length.
Meaningless how? Like our microscopes just aren't strong enough to see it.
No, meaningless as in it fundamentally does not exist. If you try to calculate physics at distances smaller than that, the equations produce nonsense. Space itself appears to be discrete, not smooth and continuous. Wait, discrete, meaning it's made of individual, indivisible chunks. That sounds exactly like pixels.
That is the core argument of digital physics. The Planck length is the minimum resolution of the universal screen.
So if I were to zoom in close enough on anything, my hand, a table, a molecule, eventually I wouldn't find smaller and smaller particles. I would literally see the jagged edges of the grid.
Eventually, you hit the hard limit of the rendering engine. You cannot have half a pixel in a video game. The universe doesn't render subpixel details because computing anything smaller would be an infinite waste of memory.
Okay, so reality has a clock speed, which is light, and a screen resolution, which is the Planck length.
Those are the spatial constraints.
But the hardware constraint that really messed with my head in the research notes was the third one, because it deals with time, entropy.
Ah, yes, entropy. The second law of thermodynamics. This is a big one.
Usually when you read about physics, people explain entropy as order turning into chaos.
The inevitable decay of systems.
Right, your hot coffee gets cold, your clean room gets messy over time, you age, mountains erode, things naturally fall apart.
That is the classical thermodynamic view. But the Sandbox Theory translates this into computational terms. It calls entropy save file bloat.
And as someone who plays RPGs, that hits so hard. But for the listeners who haven't poured 200 hours into Skyrim or Baldur's Gate, we need to break down exactly what happens to a game's save file over time.
Let's imagine you just bought a brand new, massive, open-world game. You boot it up and press New Game. The digital world is pristine. The actual save file on your hard drive is tiny, maybe just 5 megabytes.
Because the file is clean. I haven't done anything to the world yet.
Right. Everything is in its default state.
Mhm.
But then you start playing. You walk into a tavern. You knock a wooden cup off a table. You defeat a monster in the forest. You drop a sword in the tall grass.
And the game engine has to remember all of that.
Yep.
It has to remember that the cup is now on the floor, not the table.
Exactly. To keep the world persistent, it writes a line of code to the save file, cup location, floor. It writes another line, monster, dead. Another one, sword, dropped in grass. Every single interaction you have with the physics engine generates new data.
And the save file grows. 5 megabytes becomes 10, becomes 50.
The file gets bloated, it gets mathematically heavier, and here is the crucial connection to the flow of time. In this open world game, can you just delete that specific data to save space?
Not without breaking the game. If I went into the code and deleted the line that said cup on floor, the cup would just warp back to the table, or the game would crash. It would glitch out completely.
Exactly. To maintain the continuity of the simulation, to make the world feel persistent and real, the engine must preserve the history of every single interaction. It cannot unrender the broken cup or the dead monster without corrupting the timeline of the game.
So, if we apply that to the universe, the reason time only moves forward, the reason I can't unstir the cream from my coffee or turn an omelet back into a whole egg, isn't because of some abstract arrow of time. It's because of data integrity.
It is a database constraint. Entropy, in this framework, is the irreversible accumulation of information. The universe is literally getting heavier with data every single microsecond.
That is just weirdly poetic, isn't it? We are all carrying the weight of the past because the universal hard drive is constantly filling up.
And this leads to a concept the sources call physical fate. We aren't necessarily fated to have this specific conversation today, but we are mathematically fated to deal with the bloat.
We are fated to deal with the consequences of previous states, momentum, history, gravity.
We are stuck with the save file. We can't just pause the universe and reload an old save from 10 years ago.
Because the engine forbids unrendering to prevent data loss.
Not in this version of the software, anyway.
Okay, so let's do a quick recap for you guys listening. We have a map that is pre-baked, which is the block universe. We have hardware that limits how fast and how detailed reality can get, which are the speed of light and the Planck length. And we have a save file that only ever gets bigger, which is entropy.
It is an incredibly rigid, tightly controlled system.
It sounds super rigid, but, when I look around my room or walk outside, the world doesn't feel like a clunky computer program struggling to run.
It feels seamless.
It feels perfectly smooth. It feels endlessly rich in detail. If the save file is so bloated and the map is so unfathomably huge, why doesn't the system just crash?
That is the exact right question to ask.
Even a quantum supercomputer the size of a galaxy would choke trying to run a universe this detailed all at once.
And the answer to that riddle lies in software optimization. Specifically, a programming technique called procedural generation and a rendering trick called frustum culling.
Frustum culling, that's a new term from the reading. Break that down.
It's a standard computer graphics term. Basically, the golden rule of 3D rendering is don't render what the camera isn't currently looking at.
Save the memory.
Exactly. If you are playing a first-person game and you are staring closely at a brick wall, the game engine immediately stops drawing the rest of the city behind you.
Well,
It deletes the streets, the cars, the pedestrians behind your back from the active memory to save processing power.
it only calculates the world when I turn around and look at it.
Precisely. And this optimization trick brings us to, arguably, the weirdest, most baffling part of modern physics, quantum mechanics.
The observer effect.
The observer effect.
Mm-hmm.
For centuries, the smartest physicists on Earth have been terrified by this. The classic example is the double-slit experiment. When you shoot a tiny electron through a barrier with two slits, if you don't actively measure it, if you don't look at it, it behaves like a wave.
It acts like a ghost.
It literally goes through both slits at the exact same time, creating an interference pattern.
It exists in multiple places simultaneously, which makes no physical sense.
But the very moment you place a detector at the slits, the exact moment you look to see which slit it goes through, the wave collapses. It snaps into a single definite position. It becomes a solid particle.
And in the sandbox theory, how do we interpret that crazy behavior?
We interpret that ghostly wave function, that cloud of probability, as unrendered code.
Unrendered code. Wow.
Think about it from an optimization standpoint. Why would the universal engine waste precious processing power calculating the exact physical position, momentum, and spin of every single tiny electron in a distant star system if no one is interacting with it?
It wouldn't. It's inefficient.
It doesn't. It just keeps the data as a probability cloud. It stores it as abstract math on the hard drive. The code basically says electron could be here, could be there, could be anywhere in this zone.
Until the player looks.
Until the quantum observer or the camera points at those specific coordinates. Then the engine receives a hard request. Render this location.
Give me the visual.
And boom, the engine is forced to collapse the wave function. It has to instantly pick a definitive coordinate from the cloud and render the physical pixel.
That is the ultimate optimization. The universe is fundamentally lazy.
It's brilliantly efficient. It's perfect resource management. It only expends energy when a user demands an interaction. But think about what this mechanic means for our earlier argument about fate.
Right, the block universe from section 1, we said the map was already completely fixed.
The map is fixed. The world seed determined the mathematical probability of where every mountain and valley is. But the mountain isn't fully physically solid until you actually hike up it.
This is the synthesis. This is the major aha moment of the whole deep dive.
Let's lay it out.
Fate is the code. Fate is the probability distribution. It's the master list of all the possible things that can happen in the level. That was written in the world seed at the Big Bang.
But free will?
Free will is the rendering.
Yes.
It is the active act of looking. You choose where to point your camera. You choose which part of the map to render into reality by interacting with it.
It completely changes the vibe of existence. Reality isn't a pre-recorded movie that just plays on a screen, whether you are sitting in the theater or not. It is a dynamic, real-time collaboration.
It literally stays in power-saving mode until I interact with it.
Without the player, the game universe is just zeros and ones sitting dormant on a hard disk. It requires the interaction of consciousness to make it real.
That feels incredibly empowering compared to the block universe despair. But I have to play the skeptic again here, because looking at an electron in a lab and making it collapse into a particle is one thing, but looking at my empty bank account doesn't force the universe to render $1 million.
Unfortunately not.
Yep.
You can't just manifest gold out of unrendered code.
Right. So if I am the player rendering reality with my consciousness, how much actual control do I have over the game? Because I feel like I have massive limits. I can't just decide to jump over a skyscraper.
You're touching on the limits of the user interface. We need to define the very strict difference in this theory between a user and an admin.
Okay, let's get into section 4, the user interface. I assume, based on my inability to jump over buildings, I am not an admin.
You are definitely not an admin. You have read-only access to the source code of reality.
Explain the difference.
As a user, you can navigate the 3D environment, you can interact with physics objects, you can communicate with other players, but you cannot open the developer command console.
I can't hack the game.
You cannot type a command that says gravity equals 0. You cannot change the hardware constraints we discussed earlier. You can't alter the speed of light. You can't delete your save file bloat to reverse aging.
Because I don't have root access.
Exactly. Your agency in the world is what the sources refer to as bounded choice.
Bounded choice. This brings in the RPG elements from the reading. The sources actually use the terms skill trees and stamina bars to describe biology.
It's a very accurate analogy. Think about your physical life as a character build in an RPG. You have a skill tree. In reality, this is your DNA, your genetic biological architecture.
These are my starting stats when I spawn in.
Right. Your height, your base metabolism, your eyesight, your genetic predisposition to certain diseases. If you are born 5'4", you have a bounded limit on your ability to become a professional NBA center.
The character model literally has physical restrictions hard-coded into it.
And then you have the stamina bar.
Thermodynamics creeping back in.
Always. You are a biological machine operating in a closed system. You require constant caloric fuel. You cannot run at a sprint forever. You cannot fly by flapping your arms because your muscle output cannot overcome the gravity code.
You are constrained by the energy available to your specific unit.
So free will isn't some magical power where I can do literally anything I imagine. Free will is gameplay within those specific hard-coded bounds.
Right. It's navigating the maze, not destroying the maze. But, and this is a big bet, there is a piece of neurobiology research in our stack today that challenges even that limited, bounded sense of control.
The Libet experiments.
Oh, man. This is the part of the deep dive that gave me a genuine existential crisis while I was prepping.
It does that to a lot of people. Benjamin Libet was a researcher in the 1980s. He designed a famously controversial experiment. He hooked subjects up to EEG machines, which measure brain waves, and gave them a very simple instruction.
He said, press this button or move your finger whenever you feel the urge to do so, just totally randomly.
Simple enough, right? A pure test of basic free will.
But what the EEG machines showed was deeply disturbing.
The brain activity showed what they call a readiness potential. It was a massive spike in neurological activity, indicating that the physical decision to move the finger had been made.
But the crazy part is the timing. That readiness potential happened milliseconds before the person was consciously aware that they had decided to move.
Yes, the sequence of events was completely backwards.
My brain physically decided to move my finger, the motor cortex started firing, and then a split second later, my conscious inner monologue said, hey, I think I'll move my finger now.
The subconscious engine ran the complex calculation first.
That makes consciousness sound like a total lie. It sounds like I'm not actually the player. It makes me feel like I'm the little brother sitting on the couch, holding the unplugged Mad Catz controller, thinking I'm playing the game, but the game is actually playing itself.
That is the great fear of determinism. In gaming terms, we would call that input lag. The fear that our conscious choices are lagging behind our physical actions.
But the Sandbox Theory offers a different, much more comforting interpretation of that lag, doesn't it?
It does. It suggests that human consciousness is simply the user interface, the UI.
The UI, like the heads-up display on the screen, the health bar, the mini-map, the action log.
Exactly. Think about the mechanics of playing a video game. You press the A button on your controller to make your character jump. The central processor registers that electrical command instantaneously.
Right, the code knows I pressed A.
But the visual animation on your television screen, the character bending their knees, leaping into the air, the sound effect playing, all of that visual feedback happens a few frames later.
Because it takes time to render the graphics to show me what happened.
Right. The UI is just a reporting mechanism. Your conscious thought, that voice in your head saying, I am choosing to move my finger, is just the UI pop-up notification, confirming that the action has been successfully cued by the subconscious.
But wait, if the notification comes after the decision has been locked in, am I a zombie? Am I just watching a movie of my body doing things?
No, because you are not just the notification. You are the entire complex system. You are the subconscious calculation engine, the biological hardware, and the conscious narrative interface all working together. The true player is the entire organism.
Okay, so the lag in the Libet experiment is literally just system latency.
It's just internal processing time. The deep neural code runs the survival algorithms, makes a choice based on your skill tree and environment, and then the UI updates to keep the conscious mind informed.
You are still navigating the level, even if the feedback loop between your deep brain and your conscious mind has a slight delay.
It's still emergent gameplay.
Emergent gameplay? I like holding on to that. I am playing a game, even if my mental ping is a little high.
Exactly. And the thing about players is, even with lag, even with strictly bounded choices and stamina bars, human players are incredibly creative.
Oh, gamers love to break things. If you give a human a rigid system, their first instinct is to find the cracks in it.
Which brings us to the most fun theoretical part of the deep dive. Section 5, advanced gameplay.
Yes. If the universe is a game engine with rigid, unbreakable rules, can we cheat?
The short legal answer is no. You cannot cheat reality in the traditional sense.
No, entering the Konami code. Up, up, down, down, left, right to get infinite lives.
Yesly, no. Because, as we established, you aren't an admin. The main program prevents any user from overriding the foundational hardware limits. If you could spawn 1 billion tons of gold out of nowhere or instantly turn off the gravity on Earth, the entire simulation would crash.
The server would collapse. So the universe has anti-cheat protection software built in.
It absolutely does. In physics, we call the anti-cheat software conservation laws.
Conservation of mass, conservation of energy.
These are unyielding lines of base code that state the total amount of stuff and energy in the universe must remain absolutely constant. You cannot magically duplicate items. There are no infinite money glitches. You can only convert matter into energy, or vice versa. The ledger must always balance.
So we can't cheat. The anti-cheat is too strong. But what about exploits?
Now, an exploit is conceptually very different from a cheat code.
Because I watch speedrunners on YouTube all the time. Guys who beat Mario in 5 minutes. They don't hack the game's code. They don't use cheats. They just find weird, obscure corners of the map where the physics engine gets a little wonky.
They find overlapping collision boxes.
Right. They wedge their character into a corner, jump 3 times, and the physics engine freaks out and launches them across the entire map at the speed of sound.
That is what we call creative exploitation. It is ultimate system optimization. And the sources suggest that the cutting edge of advanced theoretical physics is basically just scientists looking for these exact kinds of exploits in the fabric of reality.
Okay, give me a real-world example of a physics exploit.
Quantum tunneling.
Okay, what is that? And translate it into gaming terms for us.
In classical Newtonian physics, if you throw a tennis ball at a solid brick wall and it doesn't have enough kinetic energy to smash through the bricks, it bounces back.
Basic collision detection. Wall is solid, ball stops.
But in quantum mechanics, when you look at subatomic particles, sometimes an electron hits a solid, impenetrable energy barrier and it just appears on the other side.
It just phases right through it.
It bypasses the barrier entirely without actually breaking it.
That is no clip mode. That is literally a character clipping right through a locked door to skip a level.
It functionally is.
Yeah.
A particle exploits the probability cloud, that unrendered code we talked about with the observer effect, to essentially teleport across the physical boundary.
It's using the mathematical rules of the rendering engine against itself. Because there was a non-zero probability it could be on the other side, it just exploits that math.
Exactly. The engine didn't render it bouncing off, so it rendered it on the other side. It's a loophole in the collision detection.
That is wild. We literally have subatomic particles speedrunning through solid walls. But that's tiny stuff. What about massive exploits, like sci-fi stuff? Warp drives?
Warp drives are the holy grail of physical exploits.
Yeah.
Specifically, the Alcubierre drive. Now, this is a purely theoretical concept right now, but it is mathematically sound within the equations of Einstein's general relativity.
So the math allows it. How does it work?
Well, we established earlier that we cannot go faster than the speed of light. That is a hard bandwidth limit. If you try to push a physical ship past c, the anti-cheat steps in and your mass becomes infinite. You can't break the limit.
Right, the server crashes. So how do you go fast without going fast?
Instead of trying to force the ship to move faster through space, the warp drive theoretically manipulates the map itself. It uses exotic matter to heavily compress the space-time in front of the ship and expand the space-time behind it.
It glitches the geometry of the level.
It creates a localized shortcut. It dynamically reduces the actual distance to the destination. It's a macroscopic speed hack that technically follows every single rule of relativity.
Because the ship itself isn't moving faster than light. The space around it is moving.
Exactly. The ship never exceeds the local speed limit, but it arrives at Alpha Centauri years sooner because the road was temporarily folded up.
That is 100% a speedrunner strat. I'm not running faster, I'm just deleting the level in front of me so the finish line comes to me.
It is the ultimate mastery of the engine.
But the anti-cheat is always watching, right? There's always a catch.
Always. You can temporarily bend the geometry, you can exploit probability to tunnel through walls, but you must always pay the thermodynamic cost. The energy required to fold space is astronomical. The save file integrity, the entropy of the universe, must always be preserved in the end.
You can never break the system. You can only hyper-optimize your path through it.
Exactly. You play the hand you are dealt, but you play it as smartly as the code allows.
This has been an absolutely massive exploration today. We've covered so much ground.
It's a really comprehensive framework for looking at reality.
Let's bring it all home. Let's synthesize this whole experience for you listening right now. What is the grand takeaway here?
If we summarize the entire journey today, we live in a 4D block universe, which means the map is already drawn. We are strictly constrained by the speed of light and entropy, meaning the hardware is rigid and unforgiving.
But we render reality through our observation. The engine actually needs us to function efficiently.
And we navigate this world with bounded free will. The overall parameters are set, but the moment-to-moment gameplay is ours to direct.
And I think the biggest shift for me after reading all this is psychological,
It absolutely should be. It changes how you view agency.
because it stops me from feeling like a helpless victim of fate. Usually when you hear determinists say the future is already written, you just want to give up. You want to lie in bed and say, well, nothing matters, my choices are an illusion.
But the sandbox theory flips that completely upside down. It says, yes, the map is written, but you are the active player.
It fundamentally shifts your perspective from asking, why is this happening to me? Which is a totally passive victim mindset, to asking, how do I creatively navigate this level? Which is an active, engaged mindset.
Right. If you were stuck on a brutally hard boss level in a video game, you don't sit there and cry about the source code.
You try a different strategy. You look for a mechanical exploit. You optimize your character's build. You engage with the systems.
He beautifully reconciles the innate human feeling of destiny with the undeniable feeling of conscious choice. The terrain you have to cross is fixed. That is your destiny. But the specific path you carve through that terrain is entirely yours. That is your choice.
And that profound shift leads right into the final challenge from the source material that we want to leave you with today.
It's a really powerful question.
I really want you to just sit with this thought as you go about your day. Are you ready?
We go.
As you move through the 4B block today, ask yourself, you hold the controller, the map is already drawn, but the path is yours. How will you optimize your playthrough of the architecture that has already been laid out for you?
Stop blaming the dev team and master the engine.
Stop button mashing and start actually playing. Game on.
Game on.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. We'll catch you in the next level.